we went the path of least resistance, right? We went down main corridors, that type of thing. In 1936, only about 3 to 5% of farms in Michigan or in the country had electric service availability. So the Rural Electrification Act was passed, and that created the electric cooperatives, the rural electric cooperatives. We know them up here as Great Lakes Energy, also Presque Isle Electric and Gas are rural electric cooperatives. They ended up getting the more rural areas just by nature. So you can see, you know, Consumers Energy gets the luxury of going up I-75 and Old 27 and 131 on the major corridors. They're out in areas that are much more rural and remote, which is why they got hit harder than we did, quite frankly, as a utility when the ice storm took place. It was harder for them to get to a lot of areas, and they're not as big as us, so there's not quite as many resources to make it happen. So let's talk ice storm. This is a weather map from a few days before the ice storm hit. We actually have, you may be surprised to know, a full-time meteorologist on staff at Consumers Energy. Her name is Haley Bliskowski, and Haley's on top of it, I tell you. So she had these couple of different models that she was looking at in her weather forecasting, whatever she does, and she said, this doesn't look good. And the model on the right was kind of a most likely scenario for what everybody kind of thought was going to happen. But there was a worst case scenario on the left. And while it didn't turn out exactly like that, Haley went to the leaders in our company and said, you know what, I think we need to be ready for this worst case scenario. She says, I think this is going to be bad. And to our company's credit, they listened to her. You know, that's a lot of faith to put in an individual, particularly a weather forecaster, right? Yeah. But they put trucks in Gaylord before the ice storm even happened. We had trucks parked in town ready for the storm to come. In addition to that, based on Haley's advice, we started gathering meetings, online Teams meetings, and we sent word out to county emergency managers, county administrators, township supervisors, local sheriffs, fire units, whoever was willing to listen to us. We had some public meetings where we brought in some leaders from our team and said, here's what we're preparing for, folks. And I had people tell me that this was the first time they really heard that an ice storm was coming, was from Consumers Energy. So we took a lot of pride in that, and for good or bad, actually for bad, Haley was right. She kind of nailed it. This is a little poster we have in our company that talks about ice accumulation impacts. And when we get to about 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch of ice, we start to have damage in our system. If we get greater than a 1/2 inch of ice, that's a catastrophe waiting to happen. We're nervous if we're going to get more than a 1/2 inch of ice. We know that's going to be a big deal. And as you know, we did a lot more than just a 1/2 inch of ice in northern Michigan. That picture was in Gaylord, by the way, so pretty remarkable how much ice came this way. They're calling it hopefully the storm of a generation, the storm of a century, whatever. We hope we never have to see this again, but this was full devastation. If you need me to talk to your friends in the Senate to let them know that this was a big deal. So.
Please do.
You've seen all the pictures and the different things. You all have stories to tell. The picture on the right is M32 going, let me get my bearings, going east of Gaylord, kind of out by the E-Free Church out in that neighborhood. And if you guys recall, or if you drove out there, there was pole after pole after pole, just as far as you could see, just laying down on the ground. And it just went for as far as you could see. I think most of those were Great Lakes Energy's. But still, it just demonstrated the scope and the impact of what this did to our electrical infrastructure. It was devastating. So to add to the fun, we had our ice storm come through in a couple of waves. One night we had their storm, and then the second night it came through almost exactly 24 hours later, if you recall. And that's what really put us over the edge. And so, and then the next day, Mother Nature decided to give us 14 confirmed tornadoes in the state of Michigan downstate. And you can see where they were all reported. And if you can't see the signs, but this one was 100-mile-an-hour winds. This one was 90, 75, 80, 65, 110, 85, 90. So we dealt with a lot of devastation in the lower part of the state. at the same time, which really taxed our resources. So kind of the thought in the whole process, it was remarkable for me as a community affairs manager to observe all of this happening. It was, I'm not in the field, I'm just peripherally involved, and I'm seeing pictures, I'm going out to different sites, but to see all that took place was pretty remarkable. And I had somebody describe it, and I totally agree, it's akin to mobilizing an army. A big, large-scale military operation. And one of the things we had to do was set up mobile command centers for our leaders. The one on the left is parked in Gaylord, the one on the right is parked in Pelston. Some of you may know Dale Jacob on the right of that picture. You might know Dale. He coaches basketball at St. Mary's. He was one of our field leaders. He just retired from our company just recently, but Dale's one of our field leaders, and that's him working at one of the command centers, the one up in Pelston. But these mobile command centers have ability to print out designs for new circuits and things like that. They can do all the printing. They obviously have all the communications tools and all of that there. This was also in Gaylord. Had a kind of an operations site set up. And the other part of mobilizing that army is, you set up your command units, you got to get supplies to the troops, right? You got to get them the tools, the ammunition they need to do the job. So this is where we staged semi-trucks and utility poles, and just kept feeding those things so that we can make sure we had the adequate supply for everything. The utility poles, I asked one of our field leaders, I was stopped by the command center and checked in. I was talking to one of our field leaders, I asked him, how many poles have you gone through? And he just shook his head, I don't know, they just keep coming. It was really, really telling. Interesting side note, most of our utility poles came from a facility in McBain, so they were Michigan made right here, so that which was convenient. Yeah. So this is just a sample of who's involved. You talk about the Army, so you got your field leaders. We had people going out, consider them your scouts. The damage assessors, they go out in front of everything. What's damaged, what's down, what can be repaired quickly, what's going to need extensive repairs. Then we had designers and engineers. We literally had to rebuild entire circuits, electrical circuits, all of the poles, all the wires, everything that go into a circuit. And then we had to rebuild all of that on the fly in a very short period of time. So our designers and engineers are literally in the field doing that design work to try to get everything lined up for it. Obviously, our line crews were kind of the real heroes up in the buckets, trying to get everything restored. Our forestry crews backed them up by clearing trees and getting them access to where they needed to go. We have obviously supply staff that was working on we need transformers here, we need wire here, whatever, getting everything shipped to the sites and all of that kind of stuff. Mechanics, didn't think about that. One night late evening, I was in at the service center during the storm recovery, and these three guys came in. I didn't recognize them, never seen them before. They were weary. They were just slogging, and I chatted with them. Turns out they were mechanics, and they'd been out in the field all day, keeping our trucks operational and keeping our diggers and all the things that we had to make sure all of that was functioning properly. So obviously dispatch, all of that. On the other side of the graph, kind of more of the internal operations, but our call center folks. And you imagine all the work that needed to be happening, all the calls and intake that they had to do. And then we have an external communications team that was doing news releases, media updates, interviews, kept the website updated best that they could. We did photography out in the field to try to show people, demonstrate what this was all about, as well as social media reports through all of this. State and federal government affairs are the people that are talking to Ken and our state senators and the governor's office. Just keep also the federal level too, our U.S. senators and Congress, just keeping them updated on what's going on so they can answer questions for their constituents. And then I'm on the community affairs team, and our work was more government related, but more on the local level. And as I mentioned before, I worked a lot with our county emergency managers. By the way, I cannot say enough good about John Deming here in Otsego County. You got one of the best in the business here. He is totally on top of it, totally calm and in control. just a tremendous leader, and it's a pleasure to work with him. I just can't say enough about John. But county emergency managers, county administrators, township folks, I was trying to communicate with them as much as I could. They would call me. They know my number, so they can call me if they have questions or concerns. I think one of the best examples of how I could step in to help was here in Gaylord. Your chief of police, another stellar guy, Frank Clays, called me up and said, "Carlin, we got a problem." They had actually a death in a home, natural causes, but they couldn't get to the individual because the streets were clogged. And it broke his heart because he said, "I would have loved to have a chance. Could we have maybe saved that individual? I don't know, but I would have loved to have had a chance." And he said, "One of our problem is we got some crew, we can clear streets, but we don't know if the wires entangled in them are live or not. If they're power lines or communications line, we just don't know. And wondered if you could send someone to help me." So I escalated that up in our system. And I think within the next day, we had a crew of 4 people that came and met Chief Clays, jumped in trucks, and they went around town, identified, got wire out where they could, identified what they could clear, what they couldn't, and all that kind of stuff. And we moved that through. Based on Frank's suggestion, then we modeled that in Emmett County and Sheboygan County as well. So just an example of how all that worked. Communication's obviously a big part of that. This is the Emmett County Emergency Management Center. So the guy standing in the left picture is Matthew Blythe. He would be the John Deming equivalent in Emmett County. He's the county emergency manager up there. Once again, did a stellar job, great leader, had operations well under control. The guy sitting next to him is Mike DeCastro from Michigan State Police. I don't know if anybody knows Mike. He was really active with the tornado recovery here as well. So he was very much involved with this. But this was the Thursday after the ice storm. The morning the ice actually melted, and they had just kind of an update situation. Where are we with everything? They invited me to come in to give an update on where we were with Consumers Energy. In the right picture, that's Governor Whitmer on the left, Senator DeMoose in the center, and Representative Fairburn on the right. They were there for that briefing, and so obviously good attention from our state leaders. Ken saw his social media and the work that he was doing out in the field. He was very attentive and caring for his constituents, which was great to see. So the storm by the numbers, this is Consumers Energy's numbers. I think probably Presque Electric and Gas and Great Lakes Energy can probably put some numbers up there that are even more impressive, but we had 900 total crews that we had. About 170 of those were Consumers Energy employees. The rest were contractors that we brought in from everywhere we could find them, from multiple states all around the region. Also more than 300 forestry crews that we enabled, 636 new transformers, 1,800 new poles, 7,600 downed wires total, and we had to replace more than 220 miles of new power line installed in that whole process. This was the most expensive storm in Consumers Energy's history, without a doubt. So you can tell your friends in the Senate that it really was an expensive ordeal. And without a doubt, Presque Electric and Gas and Great Lakes Energy can say the same thing. We're a publicly traded, profit-centered company. We probably would not be eligible for any kind of relief. If there was any federal relief issued or state relief issued. But our friends in the electric cooperatives would be eligible, and they certainly need it for sure. One thing we did, the Michigan Public Service Commission allowed us to defer some costs into the next year, so it wasn't something we had to incur all in 2025. We could spread the cost out over a couple of years, which is good news for our ratepayers. We can help spread out some of those costs. So, but the other thing is it wiped out our entire storm budget. This was March into April, and our whole storm budget was gone for the rest of the year. So Consumers Energy canceled all other storms for the rest of the year. So we just thought that was a good thing to do. Some kind of positive sides of this. Consumers Energy has a community engagement team, which I'm a part of indirectly, and A woman named Danny Mackey leads that team, or has led that team. She's moving to a new department. But Danny was able to find a food truck in East Jordan that said, yeah, I can get up there and help you out. And so he pulled into the E-Free Church, and we ended up serving about 400 meals on Tuesday after the ice storm. We did that all on Consumers Energy's dime, just to help out folks and give them at least one meal at the shelters. Yes, you and I bonded that day. So we were, there were people who, if you recall, the food truck was quite a ways away from the church, way off on the side of the parking lot. And there were some people in the church who are just not able to walk that distance. So we were food runners, and we'd take orders inside, run out and get food for them and run back in, kind of a thing.
Thanks again.
Yeah. So, Rotary in action, right? Service above self. This is the activation crew that we had that day. And I only share the picture, to show off really cool people, but that scene behind them, isn't that incredible? It's just a scene from Frozen, right? It's just incredible, the devastation. After the storm, we have a foundation at Consumers Energy, and we were able to give $50,000 back to the area from our foundation. 30 of that went to the Northeast Michigan Urgent Needs Fund through their foundation. Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation got $10,000, and here in Gaylord, the Otsego Community Foundation got $10,000 from our foundation to help with their disaster response. Also, and Neil and I talked about this, but we have a biomass facility in Grayling, and we were able to acquire wood debris from the storm to literally go full circle and start generating electricity with that wood debris. Now, we couldn't do as much. Obviously, electric demand isn't as high in April and March as it is in July and August, but we were able to acquire some debris from the area and burn that in a biomass facility to create new energy for people. So, kind of turn that around. Disclaimer, that picture is something I just pulled off the Consumers Energy website, and I have no idea if that's a biomass facility. Looks good. It looks impressive, yeah. So that's kind of our story at Consumers Energy, about a little bit about what we went through. I know everybody in the room has ice storm stories. We all went through it and endured a lot of things, but obviously I think we all know the stories of neighbors helping neighbors, and people stepping up to help where they could, and it was really, on that side, I think the human side of northern Michigan really came out, and we really took care of our friends and neighbors, and that was a good thing. We in Petoskey were without power for quite a while. Our neighbor had a camp stove, and he was able to make a pot of coffee, and he brought a cup of coffee over to my wife, and I don't think she has ever been happier in her entire life to have that cup of coffee. So I saw a hand back here.
Oh yeah.